Hi, everyone. This is the Rio Grande Current on Substack, and I am Fabiola Escalon. And today I'm joined by Gina Hinojosa, who is running for governor of Texas. Texas are struggling with the electric grid, housing, schools, and the cost of living. Welcome, Gina Hinojosa, Representative.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you, Fabiola.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm very humbled to be here for you to take this interview. I'm going to get started right away. So, who has controlled Texas state government over the last 30 years, and which offices actually make decisions about things like the electric grid, school funding, housing policy, and elections?
So, for the last 30 years, Texas has been under one party control, and that party is the Republican Party. And the power is immense. Just the governor, if you just think about the governor, he appoints over 2,000 people to important leadership positions. You mentioned the grid. The agency that oversees grid operations is appointed by Greg Abbott, right? And what we have seen under Greg Abbott's leadership in Texas is that he operates a pay-to-play system. In other words, he takes his biggest donors and gives them plum appointments. And actually, I was not the first to discover this. I had a Republican colleague, Lyle Larson, and he filed legislation several years ago to try to stop Greg Abbott's pay to play appointment system. And that bill did not pass, but this is something that is pretty well known by people who follow Texas politics. And the result is, Fabiola, that in Texas, we are all paying the Greg Abbott corruption tax. That is why we pay more and we get
Mhm.
less with property taxes and all sorts of things. And Texans are struggling. My dog always likes to participate in these conversations when I'm on.
Oh, you're good. You're good. No worries.
But right. So Texans are struggling in this state. And, Texas, we're a world economic powerhouse. That economic power is built by Texans. There is no reason working Texans should be struggling the way they are. And that's why I decided to run for governor.
Find maybe that we need to educate people more about what happens to us here locally at the state level.
Yes, absolutely. So in Texas, you're right. Texans work very hard. In fact, when you look at national data, Texans work more hours than the national average for hours worked, but Texans don't get the benefit of that work. Um, yes, we have businesses move here because we are hardworking and industrious people, but we have the highest uninsured rate of any state in the whole country. We know we have more people making under $15 an hour, more than the national average. List goes on and on of all the ways that Texans struggle despite our hard work ethic. For instance, we have some incredibly innovative small business owners, but Texas small business owners make less profit than the national average and they have a harder time getting loans. So, to your point about our business successes are a result of the hard work of Texans that Greg Abbott frequently takes credit for, but it is not benefiting the people of Texas, right? Texans are struggling mightily when it comes to property taxes. You are right. People blame their local governments for rising and increasing property taxes. The truth is, especially for appraisals, for instance, the state government and the comptroller will punish local communities that set their appraisals too low. So they're under pressure from the state to raise their property appraisals. And that's a big source of a lot
Wow.
of property taxes that we have in Texas. And let me just speak on an item that I care a lot about, and that's public schools. So when it comes to our public schools, we know that they're supposed to be funded by state investment and property taxes. Well, what has been happening under Greg Abbott is we're paying more and more and more, and schools all across the state are closing because so much of that money is going to pay Greg Abbott's donors to give them vendor contracts so that they can make money off of our property tax dollars. Meanwhile, our teachers are
Mhm.
getting paid their worth, they're leaving the profession. And as I mentioned before, schools are closing. So I'm running to governor to fix
Mhm.
that. So for governor to fix that so that we invest those tax dollars into our
Right.
needs and not to the governor's donors' pockets.
Right. So next question. In 2021, Texas froze while energy companies and political insiders made millions. So now data centers are rapidly expanding and increasing demand on a grid that already failed once. As governor, what specific actions would you take? I know here in the Valley, McAllen and Harlingen, there's a lot of talk on social media. People do not want the data centers. We know we're running out of fresh water or even clean drinking water. What would you do? What specific actions would you take to prevent energy profiteering during emergencies like Abbott did, or to ensure data centers pay their fair share for grid strain? And also, guarantee us that Texans are never again left in the cold while
Right.
corporations profit.
Right. So you raised some good examples and concerns I'm hearing across this state. Texans across the state are very concerned about the rising cost of electricity. Their electricity bills have gone up about an average of $40 in Texas, and that's because of what happened in 2021 with Winter Storm Uri. So, what happened there was when that storm hit, the gas producers withheld the gas we needed to power our grid until the price was high enough so they could make billions of dollars in minutes. Greg Abbott let them get away with that, and then they passed the cost of those high profits onto us, onto the electric bill
Hmm.
payers, right? That's why our electric bills have gone up because somebody had to pay for those billions. When it comes to data centers, and by the way, Greg Abbott got $1 million right after it was decided that the gas companies wouldn't have to pay for that. He got $1 million check from one of the gas company CEOs
For his campaign?
for his campaign. Yes. When it comes to data centers, Greg Abbott at the end of the year in December had a press conference with the CEO of Google, and he announced that Texas will have more data centers than any state in the nation. Well, shortly after, an independent report predicts that our electric bills are going to go up by almost $600 because of data centers. Well, we should not have to pay the cost of these data centers. Data centers are owned by the richest men in the world. So centers should pay for themselves. They can also provide the electricity and the energy they need by putting it on site. That's an investment they should make, as well as making sure that the impact is not taking our water supply. That is also something that they can be doing. These data centers should not be taking more and more from Texans. We have no more to give. So when I'm
Right.
governor, we will make them pay for themselves.
Good. Thank you for that. Home ownership, property taxes, and wealth. Home ownership is one of the most reliable paths to generational wealth. And yet, young Texans can't afford to buy, and longtime homeowners are being taxed out of their homes. I know I have nephews and my children, they're all in their 20s and they're still living at home.
Right.
As governor, what would you do to immediately make home ownership attainable for young families, stop property taxes from pushing people out, and protect home ownership as middle class stabilizer rather than a luxury?
Yes, so you're right. It's scary times when we don't know if our kids will be able to ever afford their own home. And I have a 20-year-old son, and I wonder whether he'll be able to ever buy a home in the community he grew up in. What we know has happened in Texas, and I filed legislation on this. So, what we know has happened in many parts of Texas is that these private equity companies that maximize profits, they're buying up more and more of our single family homes. And they focus specifically on the medium income properties, right? And so it leaves just
Mm,
less on the market. And they do that so that they can maximize profits. They do it, they mostly just rent them back at maximized profits. They are now using AI algorithms to figure out how high they can charge rent to maximize their profits. Well, I don't think that home ownership should be about maximizing profits. It should be a place for Texans to live like it used to be, right? So I filed legislation to rate
Hmm.
the private equity companies in, and the money that if we tax them in a way so that it's not worth them for them to buy all this property, any money we generate, let's give it back to Texans so they can apply for grants to buy their own home. I've also supported legislation and will push cash back for renters. What is happening right now is there's a lot of focus on property tax cuts for homeowners, but renters pay property taxes too. And so they should get the benefit of some of those property tax cuts so they can start saving to someday buy their own home. So that is why when I'm governor, we will also prioritize renters so that they get the benefit from any tax cuts from high property taxes.
Okay, on gerrymandering, on with gerrymandering. Texas aggressively gerrymandered legislative and congressional maps, so much so that Democratic lawmakers had to leave the state to force national attention. I don't know if that was the aim to force the national attention, but that I think that was a result. Boy Center, what concrete steps would you take to challenge the gerrymandering in real time? Like I think that we need it as soon as possible.
Yes, what Greg Abbott did by gerrymandering these and redrawing the lines for these congressional districts in the middle of the decade, which is not supposed to happen. It's supposed to wait till a new census. You get new numbers and then you redraw them. What Governor Abbott did in the middle of the decade by doing it last year is he directly targeted the Latino community and our voice. He watered it down so that we would not have the same say in the halls of power in Congress in Washington, D.C. to get the funding we need for hospitals, to get the funding we need for all sorts of things, right? And so it was a real slap in the face to our community. The Valley was hit hard by that. What I have supported and what I will continue to support is an independent redistricting committee. I think that we need to take the politicians out of drawing the lines for these districts. It should be that the people elect their representative, not that the representatives get to decide who votes for them so they can hold on to power. That is a corruption of democracy, and it is not something that I support. So I will continue to support having independent, nonpartisan um, community members draw lines that keep our communities together, that keep our voice strong so that we can have the power to elect the people of our choice.
Thank you. The Rio Grande Valley ranks near last in voter turnout, and Republicans invested early and heavily in shaping beliefs among Latino voters, while Democrats often assumed the demographic growth would translate into votes. I myself remember thinking, oh, we're going to be the largest majority, it's going to turn blue, and then waited and waited and waited, and nothing happened. And then finding out all this money was put into the valley, continues to be the money continues to come in, and you have so many Republican representatives at all level, elected officials that keep coming down and using our community to just continue their propaganda, right? And to recruit more votes. What do you think went wrong, and how can Democrats rebuild that trust instead of assuming loyalty?
I think it takes being in the community, talking to community members. We've been since I launched just a few months ago. We've been there over 6 times, I believe, in the valley, talking to community members about meeting with leaders of all sorts, both grassroots leaders and elected leaders, about what is important to them in this election. And so that needs to happen. There's no shortcut to winning any group's support. There needs to be real, authentic engagement, conversations, and that's why we're trying to spend that kind of time and invest in people and communities to make sure that we're doing this campaign right.
For the record, I have noticed this cycle, there's a lot more people coming, a lot more candidates coming and visiting, and I hope that continues, and I hope that it increments. On the border labor crisis depends, Texas depends on laborers. So when politicians talk about the border, they almost always focus on enforcement, but it's also part of the Texas economy. There is a crisis that can't be ignored. There's been just recently, I think it was this week, yes, on Monday, there was a Texas Builders Association meeting. There was one recently. There's been meetings with the agricultural workers. Um, we are facing a labor shortage, in all these industries, and then the other industries get affected, like the trucking companies. Well, they don't have produce to take, or the banks, they don't have loans to give out, so they're not making money. How did
Right.
Texas get here, and how have the state policies and political rhetoric at the border made the labor crisis worse?
So, um, we got here because what we have seen is that there has been an effort to really punch down at the immigrant community and even just Latinos who are Americans, right? I was down there 2 weeks ago and heard about an American who got swept up in one of the sweeps at the job sites, at the construction job sites, who was
Hmm.
being detained. A naturalized American, like my mother is a naturalized American, and now they're just
Hmm.
questioning the process by which he became naturalized. So it's scary times. And the problem is one is American families are being attacked and separated. Everybody knows somebody detained and deported, and this is not making us more safe. It's making us less safe, right? I mean, I talked to the district attorney in Harris County in Houston, and he said he has sex predators that he cannot prosecute because the witnesses have been deported. Well, we used to make exceptions for that kind of
Hmm.
thing, and that's not happening anymore. Now it's just a blanket. Everybody gets treated the same, even if you were in process and had been waiting for a long. Everybody gets treated the same, and it's not it's not a focus on criminals. So in Texas, we have relied on undocumented labor for a long time. We need real solutions. A solution that I think we need to start taking seriously is making sure that we prepare uh, Americans for the trades. These are
Hmm.
jobs that are good paying jobs and that are the right fit for a lot of kids. My own son, he likes to work with his hands, right? He is very interested in trades kind of work, but we focus on college almost exclusively, and college is good and right, and yes, we should make it easier for anybody who wants to go to college. But then there are also kids who would like to go into the trades, and those are good paying jobs too. So we need a robust um, pathway and opportunity for Texas young people to go towards the trade route so we don't have to rely on immigrant labor as much. That's a longer term solution. But right now, what I say is that we need a governor who defends our communities, all of our communities, all Texans. Latinos are just as American as anybody else in this state, just as Texan. And we need a governor who stands up for us and says enough with the inhumane treatment of people.
Absolutely. I think what a lot of people don't realize is that right now there's so many people that are, well, they're not showing up to work even if they are naturalized citizens or legal citizens or they're here legally. Um, and when you take away the labor force so quickly, then there's nobody filling in those jobs. It's not improving the economy, it's tanking the economy. And like you were saying, it's a long-term process because now there's nobody skilled to do a lot of these jobs.
Right.
Um,
Okay. So
because
like I said,
we're still going to depend on like H-1A visas or H-1B visas, perhaps. But what would you do as governor?
well, I think that there is frustration in Texas when a lot of Texans who are, trying to make it cannot, whether they're American, I mean, a lot of American Texans, right? And I think we need to make sure that we are developing the workforce here. What happens in Texas is we import, yes, from Mexico, yes, from other countries, but also from other states, workers to fill
Mhm.
oftentimes good paying jobs. We need to prepare our own workforce in Texas and stop importing this workforce and preparing our own young people for for the jobs that can support a family supporting jobs.
There's groups in the RGV have been organizing since 2023. Before that, there was hardly anything here. There was just like nothing. Um, that's what led me to be a grassroots organizer. Many unpaid organizers are burned out. If elected governor, how would you materially support grassroots organizing, funding, training, infrastructure? How would you scale organizing without relying on unpaid labor? But we are seeing a lot of groups like Libre. Have you heard of Libre? Libre,
Yes, I
the
have.
Libre Initiative. Oh my
Yes.
gosh, like they're everywhere and they are funded and they are grassroots and they're nonprofit, but they are damaging our communities with their propaganda. We don't have anything like that. All the people that I surround myself with, we are worried about Texas. We are worried about our community, and we put in a lot of hours. I don't know if this is a question for you, if you'd like to answer it. Like grassroots organizers, let's have less dependency on free, volunteers. Do you think you could do something as a governor?
Well, I want to say two things about that. One is the current Republican leadership in Texas does the bidding of big corporate donors. So they have a lot of money, right? What is being invested right now is to serve their purposes, not the people of Texas. And so, in that sense, they're always going to have that kind of money because that's their interest. It's deep pockets, it's deep pockets that benefit corporations. So, there's probably always going to be an imbalance. But let me say this, there's more of an imbalance right now because there's not enough faith in the people of Texas to come through. When I win in 2026, it'll be a new day in Texas. People will open their eyes about the possibilities and why it makes sense to invest in our communities and to invest in advocacy that benefits Texans because we will show up and we will respond in kind with votes and making our communities better. So that is the hope and that is the goal and that is the plan for this campaign.
Thank you so much, Representative Gina Hinojosa. Any last words? Where can people find you? Where can people help your campaign?
Yes, so you can go to ginafortexas.com, GINAFOR Texas.com. There we will have links to volunteer. We need to raise tens of millions of dollars to compete against Greg Abbott. If you can contribute, that would be wonderful. We will raise that money, but that's if we are all in. I know we can do it. I need you. I need you to be in like you've never been in before. This is going to be a historic election. We need to make the most of it. Latinos are going to decide what happens in many ways in the state. That's why you see all those big corporate dollars coming to invest to try to keep Greg Abbott in power. Let's not let them buy this election. Let's make sure the power of the people is loud and clear and our voice is registered in November. Thank you.
Gina, thank you for this conversation.
Thank
Texans are
you.
ready for clarity. They're ready for change, not slogans, not blame shifting. We want accountability. So, to our
Yes.
listeners, if this episode helped connect the dots, please share it. And thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, Fabiola. Take care.